Let's start with Geeta, Diana. Om. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf, and people of purified intellect are the drinkers. The milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. That's that. Nathan, eyes open. So we're going to dive deeper into the gunas. Here's how it looks from the inside, and you have an example of this. I said the hardest thing for us to do is actually to listen, shravana. We just hear our own self, our own mental factory. And here's what's at work. So tamasa, when it's dominant in the mind, then the mind is veiled. So it's like a blanket on awareness. And so you might even think that you're paying attention. You're not, by the way. You're going back into an old habit.
So is it...
Look at this. Look at this. Just, that's why I said Thomas.
Is the finger...
Just look at this.
Yes.
Look at it carefully. Rajas is the anger that arises when Swami is correcting you. This is close up how they look. Tamas doesn't even let you see what's in front of you. Right? And it imagines that you're seeing it. And there you go. And then Rajas arises, and that's what you're seeing right now. So the tamas actually is both of them prevent us from being present. Both of them do. And so there are benefits as well. There indeed are, and we utilize the benefits in sadhana. But it turns out when we're missing life and we're missing the joy in life, it's the veiling, tamas, and the tossing, rajas, in the mind that are dragging us, as it were. The tamas leaves us in the darkness of our own inner psyche, like isolated, withdrawn, wanting to withdraw. That's what it looks like in the mind. And then, and you see it, and it, completely non-judgmental. We just want to recognize what we're dealing with, right? Yeah, so it's not actually an enemy, but there are ways to, when you see it, there are ways to transcend it, to come back into the sattva. Okay, a little bit more of a deeper dive. So it's just practical stuff, right? And Rajas, you can see right away when that anger starts to arise. This bozo. Like that. I'm doing my best. He'll say like that with a tone on it. It is, right?
I'll do the kirtan the way I want to.
That's right. Leave me alone. I'm leaving this place. I'm getting up today. I've had enough of this. Rajas. Oh.
Thank you so much, Swami Ji, just for holding this place of being able to inquire. Who am I?
Okay, so this morning a deeper dive into the qualities, and this is what's going in this chapter, and then this comes back as well. So just to pick up, I'll read the last two shlokas. Sattva leads to happiness, rajas to action, O Arjuna, while tamas, verily shrouding knowledge, leads to heedlessness. Now sattva arises, O Arjuna, having overpowered rajas and tamas, now rajas, having overpowered sattva and tamas, and now tamas, having overpowered sattva and rajas. So we'll find ourselves able to be present for a while. In what we call normal life. This is what's happening. So we'll have those moments where we're present and clear on what to do and all of this. And then the moments where we feel like we're propelled into action. We're going to do, and we're going to change, and we're going to leave, or we're going to go, or all of these. And then the moments where it's just like a blanket, but it's a blanket over the inner person. It's a dullness that comes, lethargy, depression, like that. And in those times, we're just completely withdrawn, but not into the real self, into what seems like a cave, dark place. Okay. So continuing with the three. When through every gate, and the gates in the body are the senses, when through every gate in this body the wisdom light shines, then it may be known that sattva is predominant. Greed, activity, and the undertaking of actions, restlessness, longing, these arise when rajas is predominant, O Arjuna. Darkness, inertness, heedlessness, and delusion, these arise when tamas is predominant. Again, not talking about you, talking about the state of the mind. Not talking about you, your soul, eternal. And you have more clarity about that when sattva is present as the dominant. And it's not that you're not that when tamas is present, so you can't say, I'm bad. You can say it, but it's an incorrect statement. It's an error. Because I am always essentially divine. It's just right now I'm experiencing darkness. I'm experiencing the inability to pay attention. I'm experiencing sadness and depression. I'm experiencing a feeling of being very deeply apart, like in a hole, and I can't go out, I can't get out. So this is what tamas looks like to the soul. And it's an experience, it's not who you are. And then in rajas, I'm experiencing the desire for something better. Nothing wrong with that, you see. That helps us to start to get out. I'm experiencing the desire for you. Well, that's a little more problematical. Because now I want something that's not mine, as it were. I'm experiencing the desire for money. I'm experiencing the desire for sex. I'm experiencing the desire for you to get the heck out of here.
Name all.
Yeah, so that's rajas. So that's the experience of rajas, and that's what rajas looks like to the soul. To the soul. Okay, and then commentary from Swamiji. He says, here and in the 17th and part of the 18th chapter, Krishna classifies, and by the way, what sattva looks like to the soul is I'm experiencing happiness. I'm experiencing contentment. This is okay here. This is pretty good. I'm learning something. It's a little tough sometimes. Lord, I know that you're here. I'm so grateful. And this is all sattva. Right? This is what sattva looks like to the soul. So these three in turn, which is why we'll experience, one moment or one day, it seems like everything's great and I'm really enjoying where I am and I love the people I'm with. And then another moment or another day, it's, oh, this person did that. And, I don't know if I can take it here and like this, right? And then another day, it's, I've been screwing around, not doing, I need to do this, I need some money, so this cycle. And so obviously between the three, sattva supports stability more. Sattva supports clarity more. Sattva supports learning more. It supports listening more. It supports being aware more. It supports being balanced more. And so, therefore, we would say sattva wants to be cultivated. And mantra and all of these practices, they're about cultivating sattva. But you're not sattva either. It's also an experience. But it's an inner experience of the psyche, right? So it can be cultivated. It can be cultivated. Where it's harder to cultivate sattva outside of you, outside of the person, it's more straightforward to cultivate it within the person. So we say in yoga there are actually two practices. Practices fall into one of two groups. Either cultivating of sattva, bringing sattva forward more and more, and renouncing, withdrawing from the little I, from the person, even from the sattva. Although, while cultivating it, just an idea. It's not my sattva, it's the Lord's sattva. I'm sharing sattva, I'm not doing it for me. Like this. These attitudes and approaches will help to cultivate it, but not for you. We've been so long, and we discussed this, we've been so long tied up in a way where it was all about me from a little I standpoint, that we're just accustomed, like, if I'm not doing for me, why would I do something? Right? That's been the mode. And here, when there is sattva, then it's possible to turn that around and to offer it, engage with it, to offer it instead of to have it. When there's rajas, it's not possible. When there's tamas, it's not possible. It wouldn't make any sense. Right? So he says, Krishna classifies here, beginning here, he classifies the three gunas in great detail. And he's doing it because we've been living this nightmare. Nathan and all of us, we've been living this nightmare where we're constantly tossed about by these shifts within the inner world, right? And the way out of the nightmare is understanding the forces at work here and mastering them. Being able to cultivate and knowing the techniques, and also finally being steady in the knowledge that I'm not this. Right? Oh.
I'm thinking as long as you keep a certain percentage of sattva, then you're able to bring yourself back. But if the sattva is too low, then you may be gone for a long time into rajas or...
Yeah. So, which is why, what's our primary practice? Practicing the presence of God. So, with sattva, it's sattva and presence of God are actually same.
Right.
So it is cultivating, but remembering the presence of God and practicing the presence of God is a cultivation of sattva as well. And so, and Swamiji talks about the practice here. He says, when sattva prevails, there's wisdom and light in all the senses. They do not distract the mind. Knowledge of this will help us utilize these periods for meditation on God, which will sustain the sattva. When sattva is predominant, it's possible to practice in a way that the sattva is sustained. So it's these moments where there's clarity that I really want to be practicing the presence. And then when rajas prevails, there's restlessness within and the urge to be active. One may not be able to completely avoid this, nor is it always necessary to avoid it. Narada in the Bhakti Sutra assures us that even desire, egoism, and so on can be directed towards God. When there is longing for a worldly object, it is possible with good preliminary training to turn the longing Godward. So in sattva, there will be a realization of the wisdom of this. We can resolve, and then as rajas begins to come, it's possible to turn that longing towards God instead of an object. This is what's being shared. And now use that activity in service of the Lord instead of for me to gain something.
Yeah.
So that's using the rajas. I think of, and she joins us sometimes, but Mahalakshmi Chaitanya, if she joins or watches this, she'll laugh. But we would think that she's almost pure rajas, because she's always, those of us who know her, she's always doing. She's always doing. And Uma Devi, in your personality, a lot of rajas tend towards doing. And you see what's being shared is, okay, nothing wrong with that at all. Just do for a higher purpose. And so that's the shift that she's been through, and always whenever she was doing something for herself, right, anger would immediately come. But now it's transmuted because now she's been able to work it out, and she's constantly doing still. And there's some attachment, of course, but also she's doing for the benefit of all, or for God, like this. And so that's utilizing the rajas, which also supports the sattva becoming more predominant in the person. And then he says, when tamas prevails and there is stupidity in the mind, we don't use the word stupid much in translation, but stupidity looks like this dullness. It's just dull. And my wisdom isn't even available in those times. My own intellect, my own intelligence, as it were, is not available to me in those times, right? Look at how it happens. We think the stupidest things. The craziest things. And we find ourselves meditating upon them. And the more we recognize that, it's like, as soon as you see it, nope. I know where this goes. No, and if you can't shake it off some other way, then, well, time to sleep for a little while. So he says, when it's there, we should avoid its expression in actions and by various methods like yoga asana, pranayama. Right? That's what we say first thing when that real tiredness comes on and the lethargy is coming. If we have duty, it's the middle of the day, it's time for sadhana, etc. Pranayama. Pranayama, maybe one of the asanas. A brisk walk and so on drives the tamas away. Knowledge of the guna for understanding of oneself. Knowledge of the gunas for understanding of oneself is a great help. We can see that, right?
Yeah.
The more we have an understanding of the gunas, the more we're able to work with them. Work with them. Cultivate what we want at the time that we want it. And when it comes time for sleep, then you actually cultivate tamas. All right, come on here, tamas. It's time now.
Here, Tamas.
It does. Once we have more oversight on the three, and find the capacity to use them effectively in a balanced way, then sleep, when it's time for sleep, actually it comes just like that. Just like that. You just close the eyes, and that's it. And then it's time to wake up, and you open the eyes. Like that. So it becomes more possible to cultivate them in a way where they come when you want them to come instead of, I won't say that they're always this way, but more and more, and that they'll come when you want them to come to support the mission, the Dharma. Like that. And then we get back to death. This time we're leaving the body. If the embodied, number 14 and 15, if the embodied one meets with death when sattva is predominant, then he attains to the spotless worlds of the knowers of the highest. Meeting with death in rajas, he is born among those who are attached to action, and dying in tamas, he is born to the womb of the senseless. And here's Krishna. Here's the commentary. Krishna has already emphasized the great truth that one's subsequent birth is determined by the bhava, and the bhava is the state of one's inner person. So it's not what you're doing. We've been talking the last couple of days about the inner person, to focus on the inner person, not what you do, not what you say, but what are the desires, what is the way that you see yourself, and what is the nature of this inner person. That's what's called bhava, or the inner attitude. So he says, Krishna has already talked about this. We already had several chapters back. We had discussion about the prevailing thought at the time of leaving the body determines the next birth, right?
Right.
So here he comes back to the same point and brings the gunas into it and says this. So Swamiji says now he expands the idea. If the bhava is sattvika, if it's sattvic, he will ascend to higher regions. Though in the literal sense, this verse does not imply that even if by accident the wicked one is in a sattvic state, like he's in holy company, that he'll rise to the higher region. Normally it's not possible. At the time of departure from the world, that quality alone will prevail, which has been predominant most of our life. And he says 2 conclusions are derived from this. First, that we should endeavor to keep the heart and mind always sattvika, as much as we can. And then he gives the practice by remembering God constantly. Remembering God is an invitation of the light back inside. And inviting the light in is cultivating sattvika. And then 2, whatever has been the biography of the dying person, those related to him would do him the greatest service if they, at the slightest premonition of the end, surround him with a spiritual atmosphere, singing God's names, recitation of scriptures, etc., and prevent any show of worldly affections and attachments which will effectively prevent him from rising higher in evolution. The fact has been clearly stated here that it is not inevitable that the soul returns to this earth. It may do so, or it may ascend to the regions of pure souls, or descend into the world of the senseless, human or subhuman. He says, in photography, the quality of the print depends on the state of the negative. Similarly with nature, abandon the complacent attitude that once a human being, always a human being. If the heart and mind are subhuman, where is the injustice in earning a subhuman birth? So, next, and we'll pick up on Wednesday morning.
So I just have a question about that one.
Yes, Joe.
He said the predominant state of the guna throughout your life.
Yes.
So does that mean that it's not really the guna that predominates at the moment of death,
No.
but the average?
No, it's a very good question. It means what you've said. That's his intention. He's just intending to say that if now the predominant guna is sattva, but at the time of departure from the body it's tamas, it doesn't mean that it will be a subhuman birth. So in other words, now there's a predominant, in this moment there's some predominant guna. But now in a greater sense, in this person there's a predominant guna. So it means that.
I see.
Yeah. It's also, there's the story, and we talked about this a few months ago. When we were talking about the state of the mind on departure from the body. But there's the story of the father who calls the name of his son Narayana. You remember the story at the time? And he goes up because he's calling the name Narayana, and then you say, but wait a second, he was thinking about his son, not God. And is this really? Swamiji points that out in his commentary as well, but Swami Satchidananda does.
That's what Loriama said, or the entities that came to take him to the lower realms,
right,
were saying, hold on to Vishnu, and saying he's talking about his son. He was calling his son, not you.
Right. But really, whatever is the predominant state of the mind is what is almost certainly going to be the action or reaction, the mental action or reaction at that moment. In other words, Gandhi, predominantly sattvic. And so gunshot, Ram.
Right.
So whatever is the predominant at that point in time, not in that moment, but in that portion of the life, in that ashrama, that's likely to be, very, very, very likely to be the action or reaction at that moment of departing. So,
right.
Home. Okay. I was just going to read the next one and then we close. We'll come back on Wednesday morning, number 16. The fruit of good action, they say, is sattvika and pure. Verily, the fruit of rajas is pain, and ignorance is the fruit of tamas. Okay. All right, let's close. Final prayers and arati. Page 174. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyanto Makashi Dukhabhat Bhave Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mritorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. On below Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki, and for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Jai. Okay, let's rise for our tea.